Lionsgate dropped the first teaser trailer to Otto Bathurst's Robin Hood this morning. On paper, this seems like exactly the kind of doomed-to-fail project that I'm always talking about. It's a needless, grounded, gritty origin story reboot based on a character that is known and somewhat liked without being super-duper popular. It stars a young white guy, Kingsman's Taron Egerton, talented to be sure, but with little to no actual, put butts in the seats, drawing power. And it promises to tell us a different version of the story we already know, which may or may not be an entire film leading up to getting the iconic character in the iconic form that we came to see in the first place, with a promise that we'll get a more traditional adventure in the sequel. So when I say that the movie looks like a disaster waiting to happen, that's not necessarily a judgment on the film's eventual quality. But we've seen this play out with King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, and Ridley Scott's Robin Hood 8 years ago. Yep, the Robin Hood legend has already had two high-profile dark and gritty reboots since 1991. The one that starred Kevin Costner, a post-Die Hard Alan Rickman, and the likes of Morgan Freeman, Christian Slater, and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, was a monster hit in the summer of 1991, operating as a prime example of studios Warner Brothers, in this case, learning the correct lessons from the success of Tim Burton's Batman. The other, which starred a past his prime Russell Crowe and a barely there Cate Blanchett. It earned $336 million worldwide, but on a $200 million budget. Fun irony, the film was intended as a George W. Bush parable. Spoiled son of a good lead squanders the riches left to him by his father and unjustly raises taxes on the poor to make up for it, but was released just as the Tea Party was coming to prominence, and thus its taxes equals evil shtick was taken as right-wing propaganda. As noted at the time and after, the marketing campaign for the Universal, now a division of Comcast Corp. Picture also promised a revisionist take on the legend, expecting audiences to forget that the last film was exactly that as well. And now we have, at least, a third major Robin Hood movie that promises a dark, gritty, and realistic origin story. It's not so much that Hollywood is pouring the same drink into different glasses, but rather now pouring the same drink, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, into the same glass, Mark Webb's Amazing Spider-Man, and offering a different straw and pretending it's a whole different cocktail. Part of this is a drive toward taking well-known characters, preferably with a potential for placement within an action movie, and giving them a Batman Begins-ish origin story prologue that attempts to retrofit them into would-be superheroes. The irony is that this only makes the actual comic book superhero movies, which are at a point where they are digressing from merely being superhero flicks, look all the better in comparison. Source material aside, Wonder Woman is a much better action movie, origin story fantasy than King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. And, with a week to go before the big premiere, this is the trap into which I hope Lucasfilm's Solo, a Star Wars story, does not fall. Of course, Prince of Thieves was a much better, more enjoyable movie than Robin Hood, and it was released during a time when you only got a few movies of that scale during a given summer movie season, so it's $165 million domestic, from a $25 million debut weekend, and $390 million worldwide. Warner Brothers, Time Warner Inc.'s second biggest global earner at the time, behind Batman and not accounting for The Exorcist's future reissues, on a $48 million budget made sense. Costner was fresh off Field of Dreams and Dances with Wolves. There hadn't been a really big live-action Robin Hood movie, all due respect to Robin and Marion superfans, since 1938, and it was still a time when a movie as big as Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, was by default an event movie. But today, even more so than in 2010, a movie like Robin Hood is essentially that week's preordained franchise flick, one that will go up against Walt Disney's Wreck-It Ralph 2 and WB's Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald no less. It's not so much that the trailer is bad, the John Wick-ish action is pretty cool, although it's comical to the extent that the filmmakers either never watched Arrow or think the first one-third of the first season of Arrow was its best run. It's that it doesn't stick out or make itself unique or appealing to folks who otherwise don't care about a new Robin Hood movie. With no big stars, save for Jamie Foxx's Morgan Freeman Little John, and a movie that doesn't separate itself from the pack, it'll be an uphill battle. To be fair, The Legend of Tarzan, way too expensive at $180 million, performed better than I expected with $350 million worldwide, and a decent $126 million domestic. But that one Alexander Skarsgård, Margot Robbie jungle adventure essentially played as a superhero action romance for the 50 Shades of Grey, Perils of Pauline Crowder for folks whose favorite parts of the MCU movies are when the dudes take off their shirts. No judgment, my favorite parts of Thor are when Darcy puts on her glasses. But with a cast that includes Taron Egerton, Jamie Foxx, Ben Mendelsohn, apparently in a competition with Josh Brolin to be the new late 1990s Gary Oldman, Eve Hewson, Tim Minchin and Jamie Dornan, Robin Hood, due from Lionsgate. On Thanksgiving weekend, we'll have to overcome the notion that not only have audiences already seen a big-budget Robin Hood movie, but they've seen this version of a big-budget Robin Hood movie at least 3 times. I'll be waiting to eat crow in 6.5 months.